class, this video is a tutorial on how to create Java classes. And this is not meant to introduce the subject. If this is the first time you're seeing this or you're really a beginner, you should really go take a look at my Java classes lecture, which is a good 35 minutes on all the aspects. And I'll try to link that video in here. So this is intended after you've watched that video and created a few classes, but you're still having issues. So we're going to go through creating a class actually that I mentioned in that video, which is a class for playing cards. And I've gone ahead and created just a little framework here to start. We're going to go through this full class creation, and then I'm going to actually lead you through creating a class where you really don't have much context as to what's going on. But let's go through this. So we've got the class playing card, which I've set up here. Normally you would say public class playing card, but you cannot have more than one public class in a Java file. But I like my students to have multiple classes in a file so that I can just have it all in one place. So we're just going to delete the public. That allows this file here to still use playing card, but you wouldn't be able to use it in another file, which is why you would normally declare your classes somewhere else. So no public, but class playing card, and then you're going to have several main categories in this function. You're going to have member variable fields, you're going to have constructors, getters, setters, and a toString. And then you might have some special purpose functions as well. So I've already figured out what my member variables are going to be. I'm going to have a character suit, and we should always put private unless there's some reason you want things to be public. And I think I covered in the video that the point class is actually their member variables are public. The reason why they're public is because for backwards compatibility, they actually wanted people to be able to access the X and Y from outside the class, but normally you don't want to do that. And I think this is just saying that I haven't used those yet. That's fine. So I'm going to show you how to create this entire class just by following rote memorization rules. And you really, a lot of students struggle with class creation, but it's actually very, very simple. And it's so simple even a computer can do it. And I'm going to try to teach you that way. So first, let's start with the constructor. There's really only three things you need to know in order to create an entire class. One, you need the name of the class. And the reason why you need the name of the class is for the constructor. So under constructors, we're going to make this constructor public, which is the way you should do it by default. You can actually make a private constructor, which is only used within the class, but you really want a public constructor. So the compiler knows that this is a constructor by two reasons. One is that there's no return type. Normally the return type would be a playing card, but that we're going to omit the return type, instead just take parameters. The second and third things you need to know in order to create a class are what your member variables are, the type and the variable name. So we've got char suit. I'm just going to copy and paste that. Int value, copy and paste that. That is all that you need in order to create the constructor. From here, you can then just fill in the rest of it. I'm going to skip this for a second, but in here, you're going to need to set each member field. Okay, we're going to come back to that, and I'll show you why in a second. We're actually going to skip down to the setters. So for the setters, these are again going to be public setters, and they always start with the form set, and then they take the name of the variable. Suit, I'm just going to capitalize suit. And then it takes as an argument, it takes whatever your member field is. And then we just do this dot suit equals suit. And that is your whole setter. Oh yeah, we got to return. Actually, there's no return. What we instead need to do is we're going to return void, public void. So that's one of the setters. And then the other setter is going to be value. So we're going to do set value. So we're going to put that in, and then same thing. We just do this dot value equals value. Okay, so that's our setters. Now, why did I do the setters first? Well, because ideally you always want to reuse code. So this setter is very simple here, but sometimes it's not. So for example, if you're setting, let's say you've got a time class, and when you set more than 60 minutes, you need to change those to hours. So there's a calculation that goes on there, and you don't want to be doing that in multiple places. So instead, what we're going to do for our constructors, we're actually going to use those setters now. So let me just give this a quick Java doc. So I'm going to do /*, Control Enter, and now I can say sets the suit character, and let's put this here, and then let's do the same here. Card 1 through 13. Actually, let's just go ahead and use this. Great. Now we're going to go and actually use that code up here in the constructor. So we're going to do this dot set suit, and it actually even fills in what we need. And notice that when I hover over the set suit, it actually now shows me the Java doc that I had put in there, sets the suit, and gives me the options. Now, right now, that doesn't help us much because we just put it in. But suppose the next time somebody comes back and edits this file and they want to see, well, what is this set suit about? And this is in a way different piece of code. Now the Java doc gives me that help here. That's why we do Java doc, okay? So let's do the other one, this.set value. And again, we can hover over this set value and see exactly what we already wrote for the Java doc. So that's why we use Java doc. The this dot is not strictly required because it would just go ahead and use it within here. But it's helpful to both you and to me to be very clear about what it is we're doing. We're actually using set suit that's defined in this function right here. On the other hand, you don't want to use this dot suit here. And I want you to think for a second, why is it we don't want to use this dot suit? It's because when you refer to this dot suit, that is the value that is in the member variable field. That is what we're trying to set. So you're gonna, if you do that, you will in effect do nothing because you're just taking the value that's there and you're putting it back in. Instead, you want to use suit. Suit refers to the parameter that's being passed in. And it's by maybe unfriendly coincidence that it's called suit, and we could have easily called this suit param. Okay, and that would be clearer, but it's also just not what's generally done. All right, so this is the setters. Let's do our getters now. So for getters, it's similar to the setters, but a little bit reversed. So these are going to be public functions, but they're not going to be void. Now we have to look again at what does the thing return. So we're going to do public, and now it's going to return a char, and it's going to be get, and we're going to copy that from there and just make it capitalized, get suit, no parameter, and then this one's going to have to do a return, and this will be this dot suit. Okay, and again, why are we using this dot suit instead of suit? Well, first of all, there is no suit because there's no parameter here. We want to return what's stored in our member variable of the object. And let's put a Java doc in here. And let's actually copy the same thing here. And that was useful before, and it would be useful for others as well. And let's just put this all into here since that's all good. And let's do the other one. So let's copy both these. Public, it's going to return an int, and this will be get value. Return this dot value, and let's do same thing here. All right, so those are our getters. So what have we done so far? We got constructors, we got getters, and we got setters. Oh, one last thing that we need before we try testing out this code, and that's the toString. So toString is going to be a public. It's always going to return a string, and its name is always going to be toString. And it's important you do this exactly because toString is actually overriding a toString method in the objects class. And if you don't do it exactly, then it won't know that it's actually overriding this. So toString is just going to return a string. We're going to build this up. We're going to start with the name of the class. So I'll just, oops, copy playing card here. And then I'm going to have an open quote. And I'm going to do some more stuff, but I'm just going to go ahead and eventually put in my close quote so I don't forget. Now let's fill in each field one at a time. So there's two fields we need to put in here. So let's grab suit. So we're going to say suit equals plus this dot get suit plus comma, and then the next one I'll just copy from here. Value equals plus this dot get value plus that. We've already finished it. Okay, let's try saving that. And there's nothing. I know you notice that as soon as I saved it, it's stuck in this @override. That's because it recognized this as a function that's being overridden. What happens, for example, if I come in here and I delete public? Let's see what the error is. It cannot reduce the visibility of the inherited method. What that means is that the toString that we're inheriting from has to be public, so it's complaining about that. So let's undo that. What happens if I change this to be toString with a lowercase? So now it's not going to complain, it's just not going to work because it won't know to call my function. It's not being overridden. So I have to make it toString exactly, save that so that it knows that it's an overriding function. Okay, let's go and actually make some test calls here. So I'm going to create some calls to test this, and I'll come right back after I type these in. So most basic of tests is just to create an object. Here I've created a 3 of hearts, and then try printing it out. And again, what is this thing actually doing? This is actually going to call our toString. So let me go ahead and run this, and that did work. Now this is where a lot of students stop. They think, hey, great, no problem, it works. No, you haven't tested a lot of your code here. So let's start out by testing the get values, the getters. So let me put some code in. So here I'm demonstrating that the getters work. So let me try running that. Value 3 suits H. Great. Now a lot of people would say, now we're done, right? No. Now you have to test the setters. Okay, so I've added code to set the suit and set the value. So let me try running that. Okay, so a lot of people would say we're done now, right? Well, you're not. Because just because you set those doesn't mean that it actually worked. We need to go back and add one final call to actually print the value out again. So now we know that it actually worked because it did change it to a 4 of diamonds. So just for consistency, I've also created a Java doc for the constructor. And I did not create one for the toString just because the toString is always a given format. If it was something special, I would probably give it a Java doc, but we don't need to worry about that. But this is the way I would like you to turn in your assignments. So the one thing that I didn't put on here is you should put your name at the top of the file, but just put it once up here in the top comment. And the class that actually is doing the work should be up at top with the main, and then at the bottom of your file you should have your classes in the order that they're used. So I'm going to go one step further now and show you how to create a class without having the context, because you can kind of figure out, oh yeah, for a playing card we need a suit and a value. I'm going to give you an example that you have no context for, and you really need to rely on your wits. So let's create a class, and again, I'm not going to put in public so I can put it into one file. Let's call this class Tim, and let's create two member variables of a private, and let's say Sally is the name of the data type of the variable Fred. Let's use lowercase to be consistent. And we're going to give a private of data type will be Jenny, and the name will be Abe. So instead of a data type like an int or char, I'm using Sally and Jenny. Why? Because then you have no context. You're going to have to just know how to do it correctly. Name of the variables, Fred and Abe, they don't make any sense. Again, same reason. So what I want you to do is to stop the video at this point and create a class of your own. Don't use any of the names that I have given you here. Create some own names that are maybe familiar to you. And I want you to go through the same steps that we did to create the class up here. Go through that and create the entire class. Stop the video, come back after you've tried it. It's important that you try it because it's only when you try and you fail and then you realize what the failures are that it'll really stick in your mind as to what you need to do. So stop the video and then come back in a second. So hopefully you've now written your own code for this. So the first thing you hopefully remembered is you need member variables, and then you also need constructors, getters, setters, and toStrings. So always start so that you know what it is you still need to do here. I think I accidentally lost that. So what's the first thing we do? We need to create a constructor. So it's going to be public, then no return type. Instead, we copy the name of the class. Then we have these two, whatever, it's not always two, right? It could be 3, 4, 5, 1, even none. We're going to take these two parameters, and then we're going to do, let's go down to the setters because we are going to use those setters. So the setters are going to be public void set, and let's do set Fred first. I'm going to copy this parameter. So it's going to take a type Sally variable Fred, and then it's going to do this dot Fred equals Fred. And then similarly, public void set Abe. And then it's going to take a type Jenny Abe. And then this dot Abe equals Abe. I'm not going to do the Java docs for these just because they're nonsense. But so we've done that. So now we can actually do this dot set Abe, and Abe is, and let's do the other one first. Actually, this dot set Fred first. Okay, no returns. And then we need to do the getters. So getters are public, and then they return a type defined by this. So the type, oops, let's try it again. It's a Sally, and then it's going to be get Fred. No input parameters, and then we're just going to return this dot Fred, and then public. It's going to take return type Jenny. Get Abe. Turn this dot Abe. And then lastly, we need a toString. So that's always going to be a public. It's going to return a string. It's always called toString. No parameters. And it's going to return a string. We're going to start it off with the name of the class. Open bracket. And I'm just going to give it a couple of spaces here. I'll put a close bracket, close quote, and then I'm going to break this up. So now we're going to do first Fred. This dot get Fred. And then we're going to have a Abe. Oops, didn't get it. Abe equals, oh, almost forgot the comma. This dot get Abe. Finally, plus that. Okay, so it looks pretty complete, but boy, we've got a lot of red X's. Why do we have red X's? Because we never defined Sally and Jenny. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna create stubs for Sally and Jenny. Hold on a second. So these are the shortest possible stubs for those two classes, and voila, all of the red X's go away. Let's save the file, and notice how it's stuck in the override, so we know we did that correctly. And I'm not actually going to go through the calling classes to demonstrate this, but hopefully through this example you've learned how to take any class definition, so the name of the class and whatever the member variables are, you just need the types and the variable names, and how to generate a class based on that. And I want to see you guys do it like I did, where you're going to create your setters. You are going to use the setters in your constructor. You're going to create the getters. You're going to use the getters in the toString. Use this dot whenever possible. Make sure you understand where you use this dot and where you don't. What's the difference? And that pretty much ends our tutorial here on how to create Java classes. Literally every single class you could possibly think of can be done the same way. Now, on top of this, when you create a class for real, one of the things you're going to have to figure out is what constructors do I need? Because sometimes you need a default constructor. A default constructor means that you just have no parameters like this. And now you have to figure out, well, what are the default values for the member variables? So that's something you have to think of. Sometimes you can have constructors that call other constructors, and that's useful again. So here, let's suppose you have a default value of Fred and Abe. They're of their own weird data types. Let's say they were ints instead of 1 and 2. Okay, so you could create this dot set Fred here, but you're actually better off calling the constructor that is down here, the full constructor, with 1 and 2 as parameters. So that's one thing you're going to have to do, is you have to figure out your constructor. And then the other thing you have to figure out is you typically have some sort of mutators or special code that is going to go in here. So what would that be for the playing card class? Well, for example, you might want to compare two cards. Now you could have code outside of the class in the main that would figure out how to compare two values with cards. And the complexity all lies in whether you treat the ace as high or low. That's really where the complexity is. Normally, it's not a problem to compare two cards. But if you have an ace, it could be greater or it could be lower than all the other cards. So that kind of knowledge you really want to build into the playing card class. So that's something that you would have in here. You would have a compare to, which is something we're going to learn later about. But basically, you want to write a function that'll compare two cards. So those are the only other things you really need to learn about how to create classes. But you've now mastered how to create classes. So go off and maybe try another one on your own. I have a homework assignment for my students that also takes this same task of creating a class, and you should definitely try to create a class and use it on your own. If you've liked this video and found it useful, please do like and subscribe. That helps other students find my channel.